Hi, welcome to this video that is going to give you a nice overview on coordinate geometry. Now, coordinate geometry is basically about drawing lines, okay, on a xy plane. Now, this shows a xy plane where you have the x-axis here and the y-axis over here. Now, on this x and y-axis, the point where both these x-axis and y-axis meet over here, this is called the origin. Okay, and this coordinate is basically 0 0 where x is 0 and y is 0. Now from this point onwards, or from the origin, if you go towards the right, the x value increases. Okay, so you can have 1 2 3 4 5 and so on. Similarly, if you go towards the left hand side, it decreases, -1 -2 -3 -4 and -5. The same for the y-axis. Okay, when you go up, it increases 1 2 3 4 5, and when you go down, it decreases, -1 -2 -3 -4 -5. Now once you have all these x and y labeled as and together with the points, now any point on this xy plane can be represented as a xy coordinate. Okay, so for example, if I were to put a point over here, okay, and if I ask you what is the coordinate of this point, what you need to do is to see where it maps to in the x plane, okay, and where it maps to in the y plane. So the x value is 1 and the y value is 3. So this coordinate of this point here is 1, 3. Similarly, if I were to do it over here, for example, now what is this coordinate? So the x value is 4 and the y value is -3, so it's 4 and -3. Okay, how about over here? So for this point, the x value is -3, y value is -4, so it's -3 -4. You can also have points on the x-axis or y-axis. So for example, this point here on the x-axis, this will be 5, 0. Okay, because the x value is 5 and the y value is 0. And if you have a point on the y-axis, so for example here, this point here will be 0 -4. Okay, so that is the basic idea of the xy plane together with the coordinate points. Now what are the important things that you need to or formulas that you need to know? Now for example, we have a straight line. Okay, now for this straight line, what do you need to know? If I know the 2 points that are connecting this line, and I label them as x1, x2, x1, y1, and x2, y2. Now what are some of the formulas that I need to be aware of? The first one is what we call the midpoint formula. Midpoint is basically the point that is in between both of these points. Okay, so maybe roughly around here, m. And to calculate m, we say use the formula x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2. Okay, that is the midpoint formula. The second formula is the length or the distance formula. Okay, so length or distance, and that is basically your Pythagoras theorem. So if you look at it, actually you can draw a right angle triangle here, and if you recall your Pythagoras theorem, we say that if this is a, b and c, we say c square equals to a square plus b square. So c is equals to a square plus b square square root. Okay, and if you relate this triangle to this triangle here, what is a? A is the difference in x. Okay, and b is the difference in y. Okay, and if you apply that principle here, basically you can see that the length from here to here, which is c, is actually given as x2 minus x1 square plus y2 minus y1 square whole square root. Okay, so that is the length or distance formula. Now, besides these two formulas, what else do we need to know? We also can find out another thing which is known as the gradient, okay, or the slope. Okay, in general, you can say that any line that is going upwards from the left hand side to the right hand side, if it's going upwards, we can say that the gradient is positive. From the left hand side to the right hand side, if it is going downwards, we say it is negative. So this is a general way of looking at gradient. And the steeper it is, so for example, if I were to draw a line that is a bit more steeper, then this gradient of line L1 and L2, if I compare the two gradients, the gradient of L1 is going to be greater than the gradient of L2. Okay, so the steeper the line is, the higher the gradient. The gentler it is, the smaller the gradient. Okay, so that is just a general overview. So the formula, okay, to calculate gradient, G, okay, gradient equals to the change in y over the change in x. So y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Now this gradient, where do we use it? We use it in the straight line equation. So what is a straight line equation? So when you draw a straight line, okay, when you draw a straight line, the general equation of a straight line is given as y equals to mx plus c. Now this m is the gradient and this c is called the y-intercept. Okay, so if I were to draw the x-axis here, okay, just a rough one. If I say this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis, then you can say that the y-intercept is here, okay, 0, c. So this c is the y-intercept. That means where the line cuts the y-axis, and the m I can obtain based on knowing two different points. Okay, so in order to find the gradient m, I need to have two different points, x1, y1 and x2, y2, and then I can find the gradient. Okay, so this is basically the overview. So one more thing to note about the gradient is, if I were to have a flat line, okay, if I were to have a flat line, so let's say this is my x and y axis. If my line is flat, the gradient is going to be 0. Okay, that means the horizontal line. If my line is vertical like this, then the gradient is undefined. Okay, so gradient is undefined. Okay, why? Basically you can see in this case that for this example here, if I apply the formula just now, m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this case, in this straight line, if I take for example this point here, okay, and I say that this point is minus 1 and maybe 2, if I say this is 2, and if I take this point here, okay, and I say this is maybe 2 and 2, what do you see? You will see that both the y values are the same. That means the numerator here will always be equals to 0. So 0 divided by any value will always give you 0. Okay, but the same thing for this line here. If I take any point here, for example, if I say this is 1, 0, and if I say that this point here is 2, 1, 2, okay, now what do you see? That the equation m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, what will happen? The x and x are the same, so the denominator will become 0, and anything divided by 0 is undefined. Correct? So that is why the m is undefined for vertical line, and m is 0 for a horizontal line. Okay, so that is the only two exceptions to the gradient that you should be aware of. Okay, that you don't need to apply the formula. When you look at the lines that are either parallel to the x-axis or the y-axis, you straight away know what the gradient should be. Okay, other than that, you can use the generic formula over here, okay, to find out the gradient. Okay, so this sort of wraps up the overview of coordinate geometry, and in the next few videos in the website, you'll probably get a good chance to explore your expertise in this area with some of the questions that I have. All right, thank you.